you can all hear me right now. That was our 5-minute break. Allow you to stretch, work on any tech issues. Again, I'm still here in case there are tech issues you're trying to work out. Get invited to Slack if you know somebody who was trying to join Zoom this morning but couldn't get in due to the glitch. I am, double checking, making sure we have everyone here. So again, I'm Chris Adderhold. I'm the host here for here at Glenbard East. Trying to make sure all the tech stuff runs smooth. But anyway, I think we're doing much better now that we still have mid-50s here. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Erik Czerwin here for his presentation on all the record keeping, what we do with all this data, and how we get ready for whatever the ICCA is going to do in the postseason.
All right. Hi, everybody. Just before I get started, I want to thank Chris Adderhold for hosting, and Sean Fisher-Rohde and Lucian and Dylan. We've been working in the background pretty feverishly for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, on top of everything else that we're doing in life, which is not easy as a coach right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just display my screen here. So this is the online season template. I'm going to show you the template that I have made that I'm making copies of for each conference that's asking for them. I've even got a couple of independent schools where I made a copy for them. One of the cool things about this is I get to kind of retain control of all of them. So I can always hop in as support, but more on that later. So this is what I was trying to come up with was, if I've got a team of 8 players and they all have 8 different Lead Chess accounts, and I'm trying to have them play against your player with 8 different Lead Chess accounts, how do we connect those people and then record a match score sheet? And because Google Sheets is the tool that I use for way more than I probably should, that's the solution I came up with, and it seems to be working all right in the MSL. They've been really good guinea pigs, inviting me to watch some of their early sessions. So I'm going to run over this fairly quickly and then just mostly take questions. But so what you'll see down here at the bottom is I've got the home tab, the directions tab, the round, and the roster. That's what those are. And here on the home tab, I'll populate that with teams and everything. You can do whatever you want on this page. It's really just a home page for your conference. And you saw that Sean and the MSL have added a whole bunch of information, and that works for them, and that's good. Over here on the directions tab is just some stuff that I really just slapped in there based on what some other online multi-board formats have been using, and just kind of like a brainstorm, but obviously you can change this as much as you want. I left this open to be edited. So as your conference comes together, you guys will be figuring out a lot of the details, like when do you meet, how do you communicate with each other, things like that. I love the idea that the MSL is using with the Zoom. So this is all kind of up to you. Let me start actually by kind of showing the roster sheet. Just looks like this, just real basic, and I'll kind of get into some detail, and then I'll duplicate for each team. And then there's a round where you see it looks like our usual kind of match score sheet, and it does some cool stuff there. So what I'm going to do actually is transition over to my conference one that I've set up so that it has some things populated. Let's start with the roster management. So I'm going to go, actually, I put in these links. So I find my team, and it pops up this little thing, and I go to my Guilford page. So I've already started to populate this with all my players, that is their names, first name, last name, grade, and then their Lead Chess ID. He wants to change his. He's a little embarrassed by it now, 8 years later. But so there's my information, and you see I put the little link so that I can easily go back and forth because you see these tabs fill up very quickly. So this is all, you just have to populate anything that's in gray. And so this is kind of the magic here, the magic sauce. So let's say for today, Jeremiah is here, but Charles isn't. So I go to Spencer is going to be on board 2, maybe Lily is going to be on board 3, and Noah's going to be on board 4. They've swapped. And you see this starting to populate. So let me just put in a few others, and I've got this where it just populates, right? So I've got their name, first, their grade, and then their Lead Chess account. And you can change this whenever you want. Maybe this week everybody's here except for Jeremiah. So you can change it. There's some formulas going on in here if you see that. It's all hidden columns and stuff. So we can actually lock that out, but it shouldn't be too hard to just copy and paste. So let me put in a kind of dummy roster for a second. And that's the roster management. Pretty straightforward. Nothing much to it. I don't have like their phone numbers, their addresses, any of that. That would be for your own records. This is just for the tool. And this is not even completely necessary, but it makes it easier to do this. So I'm going to copy just by hitting Control C, and then I'll come over to my round 1 sheet. Right, so my conference will play 2 rounds in one night, so I'll have a different sheet for each round. And I'll scroll down. I populated this ahead of time. We're still waiting to see which of our teams are actually going to be around so that we can build out a full season. Oh, of course, I have the bye the first week. But let's say that I knew that. Let's say I was Jefferson. I'm sure Coach Brown wouldn't mind taking some of my players. Here's the thing. If I hit Control V, like I usually would to just paste, I get something, because all I'm doing is pasting the formulas. So I don't want to do that. If I hit Control Shift V, it populates just the text of what I copied. Okay. So that's how I would do that. And then Stillman Valley would do the same. He'd make his roster and come and put it in there. Obviously, we could also just change it and say, this is going to be, I don't know, McNamara, Tom. Tom is in 10th grade, and his thing is mayor of Rockford. Don't know why he's on my mind today. So now we have this tool where using Zoom or whatever you want to do, however you have players doing this, now Jeremiah knows that he has to play Tom, and whichever player is supposed to send the challenge, he's, Rickest Rick, he's logged into Lichess, and he's going to search for this mayor of Rockford username and send the challenge that way. Okay, and then just down the road. So as coaches, the way that I kind of imagine this is that we could just have coaches have access to each sheet, and you can limit that. I'll talk about that in a second. But then as these players get done, maybe Jeremiah pops back in the Zoom and says, hey, I won. So the coach will go ahead and drop a W in there, and you see it populates the score next to him and down there. And then Stillman Valley's coach, Phil, is going to go ahead and drop in an L for his first board. And then maybe Phil wins the next couple of boards, and we just kind of record as we go. Maybe there's a draw on board 4. And this can all be made live, visible, so that other players can be watching it. Coaches will see this end with all the tools and editing, but you can also, there's a way to display it just as a website. So it's just a visible thing with no interaction. Let's say maybe Guilford gets board 5, and we're going to fill it out that way just for giggles. And Stillman Valley takes us down. Congratulations, Stillman Valley. The coaches are in contact, and Phil says, yep, this is accurate. So he puts his name in there. And Coach Brown says, yep, this is good. I agree. He puts his name in there. This is completely arbitrary. It's just text. I just thought that would be a convenient way to signify like this match is over. And so that's that. As far as like recording games, and then it's just there as a record. So if you've got this displayed as a live website, you could have, players could be playing on, Lichess on their Chromebooks and maybe have their phone pulled up with the live spreadsheet and just, refresh it and just see, hey, where's my team at? Which games are done? Who's still playing? After I set this up and the MSL was getting going, actually, I annoyed Sean by popping into his sheet as he was kind of building it out for his conference. It occurred to me a very, very simple way of monitoring some of the, I'm going to move my bar here. So monitoring some of the games is to pull a Lichess game. So I'm just going to pop into Lichess. Let's see if I think I have a game in play with Sean. And I just made a dubious move, of course. But up here, each game has its own unique URL. So I'm just going to copy and paste that like usual. And let's say that's the URL for this one. So I just drop it right in there. And now attached to this match sheet, we have a record of every single game. After the game is over, you can go and pull notation. You can go to the analysis board. So coaches, you have all the games completely available to you. That's pretty tremendous. And if you're all sharing the same conference document, you can, the scouting can now go to the next level. Players can put that URL in there. Coaches can do it while the games are being played. I don't know if I have any friends online that are playing. Oh, okay. I see my assistant coach is playing right now. Hopefully he's doing well. Probably not. But if I go to his username, like let's say one of my players was playing, I could go to this and it would bring me to this game. So then I would be able to, this wouldn't be the right one, because this is just, I'll follow him as he plays another game and another game. But that's essentially where that URL comes from. We can grab the game and just put it in as we go. And that's the idea of keeping track of that. And then you just populate that down all the way. I'm gonna have to go back and delete all this later. And you can add more, it's like, so I've set it up for 8 tables, but this is infinite. The way to copy would be, let's say I've already cut these off. So maybe I'm just gonna add 100 rows at the bottom. And this is just kind of basic Google Sheets tooling. If you don't know much about Google Sheets, it's pretty intuitive if you're into Excel. So if I wanted to make another table, I would just highlight the rows that I need and hit copy, come down here to another thing, and then right click and paste. So infinitely kind of malleable and changeable. And you can change your table names. You can change it, table Hufflepuff, whatever you want to do. And that's the idea. So that's the roster sheet, and then the master sheet, or the match score sheet.
Erik, can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
We have a question. What if there's an error in putting in the scores, if there's 2 wins, or if the coaches disagree, or like it was just disagreement there? What happens if you put in 2 wins for a game?
Okay, good question. So that would be, it would just populate the same. And you'd see like you have 2 teams winning. So hopefully before you sign your name, you're going to double check and make sure it's all accurate. If there's a dispute like this, that would be something that you would have to work out with your coaches. If I want to get fancy with it, I could make it so that, maybe there's a highlight here or something that says, if this equals more than 68, it'll pop up with like an error. That'd actually be a pretty easy formula to write here. So I'm not going to write it. You see me.
One more question. If your conference does 4 or 6 boards instead of 8 due to the pandemic affecting team size, can you customize this for different team sizes?
Excellent. Good question. Yeah, so just like usual, you would just not play those last boards. Let's say you're playing a 5 board, right? So we could do that, and then it would just be that. What I did was I made these formulas based off of the center column. So if I know the central plays sometimes with like a 13-point board 1, and then like a 10-point board 2, something like that. So you can just change those numbers in the middle. At first I had them hidden, but that question came up. So I was like, oh, I'll just open up the column and you can adjust accordingly. Any other questions on the match sheet? Okay. So that's really, for most coaches, that's the most you're going to have to interact with it. For people that are managing the spreadsheet, there's things like, you see how there's little locks on these? So like this one is unlocked. So everybody who has access to this document through standard sharing of Google Docs, right? File, oops, maybe not. Oh, and then share right at the top, would have access to alter this document. So you'd have to have every coach have access to the rounds, but then maybe after the round is over for that week, maybe you go in and you hit, where is it? Set permissions, protect sheet. There it is. And then you can change the sheet. You can change the range, so I can lock out just certain cells. That gets pretty into the weeds. But then you can, uncheck, and just the sheet owner will have access, or maybe you just want to limit access to certain coaches, things like that. So you can restrict who can edit each sheet. And what I've already done for each of my schools is I've set the permissions as me as the sheet owner, and then my the coach in charge of that team. So Tim Miller has access to his team, and once we get together and start rolling, he'll start populating stuff in there. I see some questions rolling in. Chris, you want to help me out?
Yeah, so we have a question here about extra players. So if your conference does 8 boards per team and you have 10 or 11 who want to play that day, what can we do the extra 3? Can we add some no
Good question.
point rows there? Can we just put them in an arena and lead chess? What are some options that a conference could consider for extra players?
Yeah, so some of the options that are coming up are the arena tournament. So if you don't know about arena tournaments, let me see if I can move my thing again. You can set up an arena tournament, which means you create a tournament that's going to run for an hour or 2 hours, whatever. You can set your time control for the games, and then kids play as many games during that time that you have set. And they just play as many as they get. There's a certain number of points for a win, negative points for a loss, and then at the end, whoever has the most points wins. The other option is we can, usually we like to have them pair off. I didn't create anything in a round sheet like this for extras, but you could certainly just create, and actually I do have something now that I'm thinking about it. I do have a thing I can add in there that is really just a, who played who from what school. And you can have them like populate their own names and write them in and just mark a win-loss so you can keep record that way. The easiest way for them to find each other would be say, okay, if I'm playing a game against like Stillman Valley, and let's say I do have these 9, 10, 11 players, I might highlight them in some way or something and just tell my whoever I'm playing against and say, okay, Coach Bretta, you have 3 extra players. That works out. Why don't you go and have them find my players? And so the players can click through and view the rosters and still find other players that way. It's also kind of neat where if they have access to the whole, to view the whole thing and see the other players, they can find each other, not even when we're playing. They can just find other usernames and say, oh, I remember playing that kid last year. I want to, become friends with him on League Chess and play against him.
Eric, could you briefly overview for our new coaches the importance of why we need all this data? What happens to it, and why the ICCA uses it later on. Like what's the point of recording all these games?
Well, I mean, initially the thought is just that I want to have a way to share out like a match score sheet. So while the games are being played, the benefit of having this record of the complete conference season is in my spare time, which I really don't have any this year. I keep a player file, so I can build out. I can float through and look at all the other teams and look at their player rosters and create the ICCA player file, so that when we run tournaments and we do pairings and we pair teams against teams, we're building up that player database, and it just makes running tournaments a whole lot easier. And then one of the benefits of running all your conference seasons there, let me see if I can get to this. If you're not familiar with this labor of love, this is something that Ken Lewandowski started doing on paper many, many moons ago, back when dirt was invented. But I started doing it here. I even have 2021 set up in 2017, where Ken kind of stepped back. I think he moved, and I started doing it here. And I've got a record of, the number of wins and losses. Recently, I've started adding links to their result sheets so that you can go and see like, oh, this team won 3, but who did they play? Well, you can click on that and go. So I can build all this out throughout the season, and running a season on this conference spreadsheet, I can actually keep track of conference scores better. You can see that some schools, some conferences, I can't, I don't get a conference record. So seeing this build out is kind of good. And specifically for Chicago teams don't really compete in a conference the same way a lot of the suburban conferences do. And it has mainly to do with the way CPS does transportation for students. They can't get buses, and so a lot of kids are transporting to and from. Anyway, so I think we have an opportunity to help the Chicago teams form an actual conference and get scheduled competitions, so that maybe when we come out of this, they have a reason to go to CPS and say, hey, we're running conference matches. We need buses and transportation now. So another little perk.
And then us coaches can use this information in a normal year, when we help out with ranking seeds for sectionals,
Oh,
and
yes.
then also tournaments as well. So there is this For those of you, I didn't know this when I got into chess, there's this database that Eric just talked about where if you go to a tournament, if your student has played chess before, they're in the system. And so now we're just seeing kind of a visible side of this system here. And so there's people who work very hard in this database. And so this data gets used year to year, not just this year. But thank you, Eric.
Yeah, and that database grows and grows. The more accurate it is, I've gotten it down where in the last like 4 or 5 years, I've pretty much eliminated most of the duplicate names and things like that. So we do have kind of a shadow rating system where in the background, I know 1 or 2 coaches ask for that occasionally, like, can I get the updated ICCA ratings for my player? So that happens. They're completely unofficial. So we don't publish them because we don't want the USCF to think that we have any sort of meaningful rating system, but relative to each other, some of those numbers can be useful. And the more data we get into it, the better it is. I'm looking, there's a lot of, oh, here, just real quick. I want to come back to talking about how to display it. So you see that I have the ability to like click on cells and things. If I was a different user, I could click on a cell, but maybe not change it. And then if you go up here, you can go File and Publish to the web. And then you can select to publish the, which sheet. So maybe you just want to publish that round, that week's round. And you get this web page link, okay? And it'll publish and re-update kind of automatically. Sometimes it takes a minute or 2 for it to really populate. So it's not going to be nearly as fast as like circling a 12 on a score sheet and having a kid look at it. There might be a delay. I haven't pinned down exactly what that delay, like if there's a normal cycle to it, but so I just clicked on it. So you see now this is like a website and that's all that I can see. I can't click on anything. It's just a display. This might look familiar because this is how we do our sectional results, where each sectional has its own tab. So this is where, like, if you were a student, this is what you would see, right? You would just see what is going on, and you would see the rosters as it populates. And then, yeah, you could go and find other players and say, oh, I really liked playing with Nathan. Hey, he's a good kid. Let me send him a challenge or something and get a correspondence game going. And I think I've got several of these already set up through, let me check here real quick, conference seasons. I've got the CCC, the Sickle, Bennett has one, MSL, Nickel, NSCL, Western Suburban. So if your conference doesn't have one of these set up, just have them shoot me an email. I'll make a copy, dump it there, and I promise not to mess with it unless you ask for my support. One of the benefits of me retaining control is that I can go in and fix things if you accidentally copy and paste over something. It's just one of the features, but also the way I have it set up, I've got, the template ones where like really just leave those blank, because when I create a new round, I'll do this, right, where I'll just hit duplicate and it creates an empty one that I can rename, whatever I want it to be, R2, and I can move it around. And then actually over here, let's say round 2, I want to make a link on this home page to make it easier. It's really straightforward. Just insert link and then select a sheet in the spreadsheet. I want this to be R2, apply, and now we have a link to round 2 so that it gets easier to flip back and forth. I think I got an email from someone here. Let me check. Oh, okay. Someone's just asking because I did share a document with them and overdid the protections, I think. So I have to go and unlock some of that for them. That's really about it. I mean, there's a few other kind of nifty little things you can do with it, but the idea is that, we have a way to keep track of a match as it's happening live. We have a way to keep records of scores added in, that you can tally up the score automatically, makes it a little easier. And so just kind of a neat way to do it. I know my good friend Jeff Smith, I always imagine his big beard that I think is gone now. But he's working on using Lichess, open source software. I don't know much about it, but he's working on trying to build something like this into a website so it's a little bit more user-friendly if you're not a Google Sheet nerd like me. Let's see. I want to see the chat here. I mean, I think that's really all I have to cover. I do have one more note before we go to questions. Tournaments. I've had a lot of questions about tournaments and stuff, so I did have this tab pulled up. This is what my current tournament. Oops, not that one, not the season template. Where is it? There it is. The tournament template is going to be much the same. Another reason that is good that I can have access to all the documents. So let's say I'm running a Saturday tournament middle of October and a team registers. I don't necessarily need you to dump your I don't know how to sorry, I just got a message. How to get your full roster. So I can just copy and paste a sheet from another one into this one. And so I'll get rosters from you, and it's going to look a little bit different. You'll have a few extra columns. So I've populated this with player names and stuff, just kind of random whatever. And you see that I've got like each round board order. So I've got that, and then maybe for round 2, this kid is here, but this kid showed up. So I'm going to, work out a system whereby coaches will have to put in their board order by a certain time, and then I'll be using this to create each round sheet. I'll do the pairings in WinTD, come over here, put them in, populate these sheets with player names based on the roster sheets. It'll be a mad dash of clicking for about 10 minutes. And then I'll send, push out a text message or something and say, okay, coaches, these round sheets are live. I'm going to talk with Sean about some ideas that I just had about maybe using Zoom so that I don't have to rely on text messages. So same basic idea. And if you're familiar with this, using it through your conference, I have it built up for Saturday tournaments, and that's the system that I plan on using. Hopefully someone smarter than me comes up with something easier, but I think it's straightforward enough. I should still be able to run a tournament sitting in my easy chair.
All right, actually open up for questions, or would you like to show some more things?
Yeah, let's go ahead and open it up for questions.
All right. We answered a few questions already in the chat box, but at this point in time, you can unmute your mic to ask a question or type it into the chat box here, and we'll get that answered for you. While you're thinking of your question, I'll just add some commentary here. We are focused mainly on the conference tournaments. That being said, I know as a host, a lot of tournament hosts are probably wondering, what are we going to do? What can we do? And so we hope to have more information on that in the coming weeks as the tournament hosts get to learn more themselves. All right, let's open up for questions.
If I could jump in real quick. Eric, and it could be wrong, maybe I missed it. Eric, did you show how to paste a live game URL into the spreadsheet?
I did not. I showed how to. Yeah, go ahead.
This is one of the coolest things. In the MSL, when the players finish their game and they come out of their breakout rooms and they report the scores, and then the coaches put it into the spreadsheet, what do the players do now? Well, they can watch other games. And what that looks like is this. When a player is playing a game, here is our week 1. When a player is playing a game in Lee Chess, the coaches, we just decided, like I would say, all right, I'm going to go grab boards 1 through 4, and another coach grabs boards 5 through 8. We split up the work. So we can go to any game. I'll just go to my Lee Chess homepage here, and here's my game with Eric. And you'll see it's a web browser, and up here, this is a unique URL only for this game. So I just simply copy this URL, and I paste it next to the board. I paste it next to the game. And then because we post this, the viewable version of this week's score sheet, and we publish it to the students, they can click on any of the links and begin to watch any of the games that are happening that are still going. So here's James's game. Here's my board 1's game. There is a spectator chat that only the spectators will see. There are private notes that if you wanted to go back and tell James something later on, So maybe a higher board or a lower board or a coach is watching the game and you want to go ahead and tell James something later on. They will not see this in real time. It doesn't even show to them. They are your personal notes. But then they will save and you can show James later. But I can also just click right through the game. There's the notation. And you can also see that you can run analysis later. And it says where the blunders are and all that stuff. So we have players that will watch the games happen real time. And what's really awesome about that is it's fun. The players that are done will open up 3 or 4 chats of the games that are still going, and they're commenting on them the whole time. It's like chess on Twitch. It's really cool. It's a whole different social dynamic that has never happened before because we have to keep quiet rooms. And I think that's one of the greatest things about combining Lee Chess with Erik's masterful spreadsheet.
Do the players know that they're being watched in the spectator?
So no. And what it does show is if you are a spectator, it will show you who else is spectating, meaning only the spectators see that. In the bottom left-hand corner of Lee Chess, it will say, oh, there are 10 people spectating, and it puts all the usernames. But as far as I know, while there's a live game going on and somebody is spectating, it does not show up. They just play their game. They just keep on playing. And so it's kind of cool. Okay, yes, maybe this opens up idea. Maybe this will open up something in somebody's brain chemistry for cheating and kibitzing and interfering with somebody else's game. I think we've already talked about it. That's between you and your players. And, maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But man, it's really fun to listen to the kids going, look at board 8, man. Look at board 8. This guy, he doesn't know how to do the rook move. He's got a rook and king and he doesn't know how to mate. And it's just going and go, and they start. It's fun. It's fun to hear their excitement about watching their teammates' games. Win, lose, or draw. That's something we don't get when we play dual matches because it's so quiet usually.
Yeah, I'll speak for one of my coaches in my conference who his idea is one of these for a laid back tournament, have some of the coaches be like announcer broadcasters. And you can, once you're done playing your game, you can come to the Zoom and watch and listen to the commentary. I think he'll have a lot more to say than I would, but yeah, this opens up not just potential for cheating, but potential to grow this, to let the parents of your students know what they're actually doing, and they can actually watch the game, without having to go all the way to some other school or down to wherever. We have a question here to show us again how coaches can find the game to watch. So if I'm within Lee Chess, how could I find that game to watch? We have a question about finding the link to the game to watch. Erik or Sean, could you handle that one?
Yeah, I'm jumping on the Lee Chess. So what I would do once I've followed my players, right, they'll show up down here as my friends, and I can follow them online. If they have a game going, I'll be able to find it by clicking like the TV screen on their username, and there's a game. The link that I'm getting here, and this is where, Sean, I might need you to kind of jump in and help me. The link that I'm getting is to Nathan F. TV. So this would just be following whatever game Nathan is playing whenever I'm on. This is not the URL that I need. Sean, help me out.
Is there a way to access that link from your class or your team page instead of going to the main page using the TV button?
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was just getting to. So sorry, I'm juggling windows. Oh, where do I have it? Okay, so here is the spreadsheet. Let me just clear a couple things out to make my life easy. Here is this. I don't need Schoology anymore. Okay, so I am the coach, and I am going to my team page. And here I am on my team page. You could also get this from your class page. But here's my team page, and I see that S. Rody 5 is in the middle of a game with S. Fisher Rody. I resigned the game. Rats. I am in the game, or S. Fisher Rody is in the game. No. Oh, man. Let me go ahead and redo this here. Here is my game, and I'm going to hit a challenge against myself, and I'll hit real time. I'm going to hit casual. I don't care what it is. And SRody5 is going to accept the game. Perfect. And I'm going to go, now here's my game. So here's my game, and black makes the first move. Okay. So here I am, and I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go back to my team. Here's where the magic happens. I go back to my team, Palatine High School, and SRody5 is one of my players. And if I hover over SRody5, look at that. There is the game. And if I just click anywhere in the game right here, there's the game. And this is where I grab the URL from. And I just hit copy. And I bring it back to the spreadsheet, and I just paste it right in. A little suggestion. Notice that it all does this within the same singular tab, and then I have to hit the back button, right? And it's, oh, leave site. What do you want to? So here's really what I do is I hover over the player like so. Here's the game. I right click. Oops. I will right click, and I will hit open in new tab. Open in new tab. And then you'll see at the top of my browser, here's a new tab, and this is the game. I'll steal the URL from there, and then I'll just close it. But while the games are playing, I will have 8 tabs open. Board 1 goes here, board 2 will be next, board 3 will be next, and I can float between all of the boards. So that's how I grab it. I grab it right from my team page by hovering, and I go to the game right there.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Because yeah, I made the tool, and I've never had to like go and look for 8 games yet. So MSL has been cutting their teeth on it.
Okay, what other questions do we have from the audience here today?
It's pretty early on, but should we have them changed to like the names that they have in chess, like we're Skokie Niles North, and make that part of their team, their name?
So if you're having them create new accounts, yeah, do that. I saw Jeff Smith commented earlier. Lichess like strongly discourages having multiple accounts. When I set up my second account, I got written permission from them to do it. But I think if you're setting up, a student account and a personal account, that's okay. The idea of having them set up new accounts with new names and stuff, though, whichever account they have, you want them playing as many games as possible before we get to sectionals and state. Ideally, what you would have is under that classical time control that they have an actual rating, not a provisional with the question mark. And that's when that cheat detection is going to get really good. So I think that answers that question.
If I can add some commentary on this before we get to Dylan's question here. Remember at practice, when you have normal practice, normally you're practicing chess and the etiquette of chess. And this year we're going to have the online etiquette of chess. So later on in my presentation, I'm going to show you Slack. And one of the ways in Slack, one of the channels we have in Slack is Matchmaker. We can say, hey, I need a team to play, and you can play during your practice time with another school and try this all out. The more fluent your students get with Lichess and you with the spreadsheet and with Zoom or Google Meet, the more this will all start to click. And so remember, you'll have to teach the etiquette of chess, and I have to teach the online etiquette of chess too. And so I know for my conference, I'm going to recommend that October is just during practice time, play one-on-one matches and get a lot of data in for your new player accounts, and just try different games, try different settings. And that way, once we get to the main part of the season for high school, that tends to be, end of October through December into January, February. Then your students will be fluent with all the technical stuff. And so, yeah, you have to teach the chess etiquette, not just the chess.
So Dylan is asking about the team codes. So we have the ICCA has 5-letter team codes for each team. It's just something that Mike Zakate started doing. The first 2 letters is the city, and the last 2 letters is the the school. So let me show where you can find that. I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Maybe there it goes. It is in the ICCA team data sheet, the spreadsheet with all the season records and everything. So down here, down the left column is that. So the team codes are right next to it. I've got it sorted by last year's state finish right now. Usually what I do for the 2021, and I'll drag this over, is I keep it alphabetical by city. So you see like Aurora East is AU for Aurora, and then ARE for Aurora East. Easiest way to get to that, if you can see which website I'm going to recently, just go to illinoischesscoach.org, and if you go to tournament results, go to that page and then scroll down past all the links to specific ones. You see the ICCA team data sheet is kind of embedded in the site, and you can click there to get to the published version, which will spit you to here, and all that is also in there. So a couple different ways to get to that with the team codes. And Kevin Bachler has a team list. Perfect. Yeah, anybody with WinTD, those are embedded in the team player files, so you can download that and export it to whatever format you want.
Should we force teams to do it?
No, you don't have to use the team codes. It just makes it so those tabs on the bottom are a little smaller, whereas if you're writing out like Skokie Niles North, it becomes a big chunk of screen, and then it just means you have to scroll through more.
All right, good question. Are there other questions that we should have Erik address before we move on to our next short break? Terry asks, are there going to be open tournaments? As a tournament host, I'll say, as a host, I'm still learning how to make this all happen, but I'm not a tournament director, and a lot of this is going to fall under tournament directors. I'll have Erik go ahead and field that one, of course.
So yeah, I'm really hoping to run at least the same tournaments that I did before, and I should actually have a few more weekends open, because all the other things that used to pull me away, my pen show and my rocketry, will not be happening anytime soon. So I'm hoping to run as many of these tournaments as I can squeeze into a weekend, or squeeze in on weekends. As far as like the open section though, that's one where I think within each tournament host can kind of decide where some options for open players during tournaments are. I like the arena tournament format, where we could set like an 8-hour, hey, from 10 in the morning till 6 at night, or 9 to 5 or whatever, is going to be an arena tournament, and we can dump all the extra open players in there and just let them play as much as they can. If they want to stop and take an hour off for lunch, they can walk away, they can come back, and just let that run. I'm also trying to work on a system where I can have a standard kind of open section that I usually do. It's a little more difficult to do because there's not an easy way to match up player names with their Lichess name. I suppose I could set it up differently in WinTD, but still working on system for the open sections. But I have every intention of running board format first, seeing how it goes, making sure it makes sense, and kind of adding in open sections as we go.
As a host, I'll step in here. For my fellow tournament hosts out there, I was hoping to have another Zoom meeting at some point in the coming weeks where we just get together and see where we're all at. Some of us might be in parts of the state where you can open up and have physical tournaments sooner than others. Some of you might stipulations. So for example, my school says if I have a tournament, if I have any sort of event, it has to be fully refundable. Well, if I'm going to order awards 6 weeks ahead of time, or am I going to order awards? So there's all these questions that we have to decide on, and then the technology of that. And then, well, the tournament director that I'm used to working with, are they comfortable running all these digital things? So there's a lot of nonlinear steps that have to be taken here, going back and forth. As a tournament host, I'm speaking about this between the tournament hosts. And so tournament hosts, you'll get an email from me hopefully in the next couple of weeks, or we can meet and just see where everyone's at and see what information we do have from our own schools and know more about what clubs schools will be having their own teams. And so that's going to be work in progress. And we hope we want to run Saturday tournaments, and I run the Tuesday night tournament, and we're just trying to make all these things happen. But it might be a few more weeks till you start hearing from your tournament directors for our legacy tournaments, which we do want to run and keep them running, but we'll have more on that later. All right, so any last minute questions here before we take a short 3-minute break before our last section on presentation on Slack? Last call for questions for Erik.
I'd like to say something real quick. I'm sorry, before you
Sure,
go. Chris.
go right ahead.
This tool is going to be really important for, I think, the running of conferences this year. And as a conference representative, I was able to talk to my activities director and eventually the conference itself, and allow them to actually provide some funds to Erik for putting this together, and then allowing for that to be used going forward and various things of that nature. So I would strongly encourage other coaches that are conference representatives that are going to be using this to run your conference. This is going to be exceptionally useful, and I would imagine it's going to be used going forward to at least see if your conference will be willing to provide some funds to Erik for the monumental effort to put this together. So.
And I'll just add on to that, in Illinois, we're the tip of the spear here. I mean, we're the biggest team chess tournament in the nation, and we've had to figure this out for decades on our own because we've always been at the forefront. So Erik is helping us lead the way for everyone, and so we do thank him for that. I heard somebody else about to ask a question, so I'll be quiet for a moment.
No, our school, if we can get an invoice, I think we can pay anything. So we just invoice.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna start the timer here for 3 minutes before we start our last session on Slack, yet another app that somebody is telling you to use. All right, we'll be back in 3 minutes with